The council chamber had never felt so cold. Luna Frostborn stood at its center, her hands pressed protectively over the swell of her belly, 7 months heavy with the life growing inside her. 12 elders sat in a half-circle of carved oak chairs, their faces carefully neutral, but she could smell the anticipation beneath their composure. They had already decided. She knew it the moment she walked in and found her brother standing at the Alpha's right hand, a sheaf of yellowed papers clutched in his fingers like weapons. These letters were discovered in Luna's private quarters, Xavier Starfall announced, his voice carrying the perfect pitch of reluctant duty. They detail a conspiracy with the Thornwood wolves to weaken our bloodlines through strategic breeding. My sister has been working against this pack for years. Luna's wolf snarled inside her chest, pressing against her skin with fury that made her temples throb. She forced herself to breathe, to stay calm for the pup who kicked restlessly beneath her ribs. The baby always seemed to know when she was distressed. Those letters are forgeries. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Xavier, you know I would never. I know what I found. His eyes met hers, and she searched them for any trace of the boy she had raised after their parents died. The brother who had clung to her skirts during thunderstorms, who had cried in her arms when he presented as a beta instead of the alpha their father had hoped for. She found nothing but cold calculation. I wish it weren't true, sister. Truly, I do. The lies slid from his tongue like honey, and several elders nodded with sympathy. They wanted to believe him. Xavier had spent years cultivating their favor while Luna focused on their parents' healing legacy, never realizing her own brother was positioning himself to take everything she had. Alpha Greymore rose from his central chair, his silver hair catching the torchlight. He had led their pack for 40 years, and Luna had always respected his judgment. Now his face held only weary disappointment as he looked at her swollen belly. Luna Frostborn, he intoned, you are hereby stripped of pack protection. Your lands and titles are forfeit pending investigation. You will be confined to your chambers until… No. The word tore from her before she could stop it. No, you cannot do this. These accusations are false and you know it. My family has served this pack for 6 generations. My mother healed your daughter when the fever nearly took her. My father died defending our borders. And you would believe forged letters over my word? Silence crashed through the chamber. No one spoke to Alpha Greymore that way. Luna's heart hammered against her ribs, but she refused to lower her gaze, refused to submit when submission meant death, for her and for her child. Xavier stepped closer, and his hand landed on her shoulder with false comfort. She wanted to tear his throat out. Her wolf howled for blood, for justice, but she was 7 months pregnant and surrounded by wolves who had just declared her a traitor. Poor Luna, Xavier murmured, pitched low enough that only she could hear. Did you really think an Omega could carry a pup to term? Everyone knows your kind can't sustain the pregnancy. The child will die anyway, if the winter doesn't take you both first. Ice flooded her veins. She understood then, with horrible clarity, exactly what her brother wanted. Not just her lands, not just their parents' inheritance. He wanted her dead, her pup dead, and he wanted it to look like nature taking its tragic course. An Omega who fled in disgrace, lost in the winter woods, her body found come spring with an empty womb and frozen limbs. No one would question it. Everyone knew Omegas couldn't carry to term, except Luna's pup had survived 7 months already, healthy and strong, defying every expectation. And Xavier couldn't let that story end in triumph. I need air, she gasped, pulling away from his touch. I need… Please. Alpha Greymore nodded curtly. Escort her to her chambers. Post guards. But the guards who stepped forward were Xavier's men. She recognized them, Cade and Marcus, wolves who had been sniffing around her brother for months, eager for the scraps of power he promised. They would follow his orders, not the Alpha's, and Xavier's orders would end with her body at the bottom of a ravine. Luna moved toward the door on unsteady legs, her mind racing. Her chambers sat at the eastern edge of the pack house with a window that overlooked the forest. She had climbed out of it 1,000 times as a child, sneaking away to practice her mother's healing arts in secret clearings. She could do it again. She had to. The guards flanked her through the corridor, their hands hovering near her elbows as if ready to catch her should she stumble, or to catch her should she run. Luna kept her breathing even, her expression defeated, her wolf silent and waiting. Not yet, she told herself. Not until we're alone. Her chambers appeared before her, the carved door with its frost flower motif, the same design her mother had commissioned when Luna was born. Behind that door lay everything she owned and everything she would have to leave behind. "We'll be right outside," Cade said, his voice carrying no threat. He didn't need to threaten her. They both knew what came next. Luna stepped inside and closed the door with steady hands. Then she moved. She pulled her warmest cloak from its hook, the one lined with rabbit fur, a gift from a patient she had healed 2 winters ago. She grabbed the emergency kit she kept beneath her bed, packed for exactly this kind of disaster because her mother had taught her to always be prepared. Dried meat, healing herbs, a water skin, a small knife. Her hands trembled as she eased the window open, letting winter air flood the room. Snow fell in thick curtains beyond the glass, and the forest stretched dark and endless toward the northern mountains. 3 territories lay between her and the realm of the Scarred King, 3 packs who might return her to Xavier for political favor, 3 chances to die in the cold. But there were also rumors. Whispered stories of a king who had been assassinated and survived, who commanded healers from 5 kingdoms, who worked miracles for those desperate enough to seek him. The Northern Realm, where Omega wolves were not considered disposable, where a pregnant woman might find sanctuary instead of a shallow grave. Luna climbed through the window, her belly making the maneuver awkward, her boots crunching into fresh snow. Behind her, she heard Cade's muffled voice asking if she wanted supper brought up. She didn't answer. She was already running, or the closest thing to running her heavy body would allow, toward the tree line, toward the darkness, toward a chance at survival. The forest swallowed her whole. She walked through the night and into the gray morning, then through another night after that. Her feet went numb first, then her fingers, then her face. She ate snow when her water skin froze, chewed dried meat until her jaw ached, and kept moving because stopping meant dying. The pup kicked inside her, strong and insistent, as if urging her forward whenever her steps began to falter. "We're going to live," she promised the life she carried. "I don't care what they say about Omegas. You're going to live, and you're going to be magnificent." On the 3rd day, she crossed into Northern Realm territory and felt the change immediately. The air tasted different here, cleaner, sharper, thick with pine and the distant smoke of hearth fires. She followed a frozen river toward the mountain pass, her mother's old maps burning in her memory. She found the palace at dusk on the 4th day, when her body had nearly given out entirely. It rose from the mountainside like something grown rather than built, all black stone and silver spires, windows glowing with warm light against the darkening sky. Guards stood at the gates in armor that gleamed despite the falling snow, their eyes tracking her approach with professional assessment rather than hostility. Luna stumbled the last 100 yards on legs that had forgotten how to work properly. Her cloak was soaked through. Her lips had cracked from the cold. Frost crusted her eyelashes, and every breath burned in her chest like swallowing fire, but she did not collapse. She refused to collapse. "I demand an audience," she called out, her voice raw and breaking. "I am Luna Frostborn of the Silverwood Pack, and I demand an audience with your king." The guards exchanged glances. One of them stepped forward, his expression unreadable beneath his helm. "The Scarred King does not grant audiences to vagrants." I am not a vagrant. Luna drew herself up to her full height, which wasn't much, and met his gaze with every ounce of authority her frozen body could muster. I am an Omega, carrying a pup that 3 packs have declared impossible. I have walked through winter for 4 days to reach this place, and I will speak to your king, or I will die on these steps trying. Something shifted in the guard's posture. He looked at her belly, then at her face, then at the trail of single footprints stretching back toward the mountain pass. One woman, pregnant, alone, having crossed territory that killed seasoned warriors in winter. Wait here, he said quietly, and disappeared through the gates. Luna waited. The snow fell. Her pup kicked once, twice, then settled. And the gates swung open. The gates revealed a courtyard of gray stone swept clean of snow, torches blazing in iron brackets along the walls. Luna stepped through on legs that shook with exhaustion, her wolf suddenly alert despite the bone-deep weariness that threatened to drag her under. Something in the air had changed, something that made her skin prickle with awareness she couldn't name. A steward in dark livery appeared at her elbow, his face professionally blank. This way, if you please. The king will see you in his study. Luna followed without speaking. She didn't trust her voice not to break, and she needed every remaining fragment of strength for whatever came next. The palace interior passed in a blur of warm stone and rich tapestries, of servants who pressed against walls to let them pass, of corridors that twisted upward through the mountain's heart until she lost all sense of direction. The steward stopped before a heavy oak door bound in black iron. He knocked once, waited for a response Luna couldn't hear, and then pushed the door open. The Omega from Silverwood, Your Majesty. Luna stepped inside. The study was smaller than she expected, intimate despite its high ceiling and the massive fireplace that dominated one wall. Books lined the remaining surfaces, thousands of them, leather-bound and ancient, their spines gleaming in the firelight. A desk stood near the windows, papers scattered across its surface, and beside it. He stood with his back to her, silhouetted against the flames. Luna's first impression was size. The scarred king was enormous, broader through the shoulders than any wolf she had ever seen, his height making the generous proportions of the room seem suddenly cramped. Dark hair fell past his collar, longer than fashion dictated, and his hands. She could see his hands where they gripped the mantle, were the hands of a warrior, scarred and capable. "Leave us," he said without turning, and the door clicked shut behind her. Luna's heart hammered against her ribs. Her wolf pressed forward with sudden, inexplicable urgency, straining toward this stranger in a way she had never experienced before. Warmth bloomed in her chest, spreading outward through her frozen limbs, and for a moment she forgot the cold entirely. "What is happening to me?" "You walked through 3 territories in winter." His voice was deep, rough, like stones grinding together at the bottom of a riverbed. "Pregnant. Alone. The border guards thought you were a ghost." "I am very much alive, Your Majesty." "So I can smell." He turned then, and Luna's breath stopped in her throat. The right side of his face was whole, almost handsome. A strong jaw, high cheekbones, a mouth that might have been generous in another life. But the left side told a different story. Scars twisted from his temple to his collar, white and ropey against darker skin, evidence of an attack that should have killed him. One eye had gone milky pale from whatever blade had crossed it. The other burned amber in the firelight, fixed on her with an intensity that made her stomach flip. Their eyes met. Heat flooded Luna's veins so suddenly she gasped, her hand flying to her chest as if she could hold back the sensation threatening to overwhelm her. Her wolf didn't stir. Her wolf surged, slamming against her control with a recognition that defied everything she understood about herself. The warmth in her chest became a conflagration, spreading down her arms, up her spine, settling between her hips with an ache that had nothing to do with pregnancy. Mate. The word echoed through her skull like a thunderclap. Impossible. She was an Omega, 7 months pregnant with another wolf's pup, a refugee with nothing to offer. Omegas didn't have fated mates. Everyone knew that. Omegas were bred and discarded, used and forgotten, lucky if they survived long enough to see their children grown. But her wolf howled the truth regardless. Mate. Ours. Home. Across the room, Dante Blackwood had gone utterly still. His scarred features hardened into something between wonder and horror. His single good eye bleeding from amber to burning gold as his wolf rose to meet hers. A growl rumbled from his chest, low, involuntary, the sound of a predator recognizing its other half. He crossed the room in 3 strides. Luna should have stepped back, should have feared this enormous scarred king closing the distance between them like a man possessed. Instead, she stood rooted to the floor, her wolf pressing forward with desperate longing as he stopped mere inches away, close enough to feel his heat, close enough to smell him, pine and wood smoke and something darker beneath, something that made her mouth water. Impossible, he rasped. His hand rose toward her face, trembling. The scarred king, the wolf who had survived assassination, trembling, and stopped just short of touching her. His breath came in sharp bursts. The prophecy says my mate will be my death. I had accepted. I don't understand. Luna's voice emerged as a whisper. This cannot be. I'm no one. I'm an Omega carrying another male's child. I'm mine. The word tore from him like it had been ripped free against his will. His hand dropped to hover near her swollen belly, still not touching, still holding himself back with visible effort. You are mine. I can feel it. Every instinct in my body is screaming that you are mine and the child you carry. His voice broke. The child smells like pack, like my pack, as if it already belongs here. Luna's knees buckled. He caught her before she hit the floor, sweeping her into his arms with terrifying gentleness, cradling her against his chest as if she weighed nothing at all. She should have protested, should have demanded he put her down, insisted on her autonomy, reminded them both that they were strangers despite what their wolves believed. Instead, she curled into his warmth and let herself shake. 4 days of terror and exhaustion finally catching up with her now that she was held by the one person in the world her body trusted completely. You're frozen through, he growled, but there was no anger in it, just concern, rough and unfamiliar, as if he had forgotten how to express it. When did you last eat? When did you last sleep properly? I can't remember. He was already moving, carrying her toward a door she hadn't noticed before, into a chamber dominated by the largest bed she had ever seen. Silk sheets in deep blue. Furs piled thick as snowdrifts. A fire already burning in the grate, warming the air to something approaching comfort. He laid her on the bed with infinite care, then straightened and stared down at her with an expression she couldn't read. The gold was fading from his eye, leaving him looking almost lost. Sleep, he ordered. I will send for healers at first light. Until then, no one enters this chamber but me. Why? Because I have waited 300 years for a mate I thought would never come. His scarred mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile in another life. And I will be damned before I let anything happen to you now. He was gone before she could respond, the door clicking shut behind him. Luna lay in silk and furs, her wolf still humming with recognition, her mind struggling to process what had just occurred. She slept. Luna woke to warmth and the smell of broth. Sunlight streamed through windows she didn't remember, painting the blue silk sheets in shades of gold. Her body ached in places she had forgotten existed, muscles protesting 4 days of abuse, but the bone-deep cold had finally retreated. She was warm. She was safe. She was being watched. The scarred king sat in a chair beside her bed, a bowl of steaming broth cupped in his massive hands. He had removed his formal coat from the night before, leaving him in a simple black shirt that did nothing to diminish the breadth of his shoulders or the sense of contained power that radiated from every line of his body. In daylight, his scars looked worse, raised white lines that pulled at the corner of his eye, evidence of wounds that should have been fatal. He was spooning broth into the bowl from a pot on a nearby table, serving her himself. The scarred king, performing servant's work with hands that had conquered kingdoms. "You dismiss the servants," Luna said, her voice rough from sleep. "You are my mate." He said it simply, as if that explained everything. "Strangers do not touch what is mine. Strangers do not see you vulnerable, not until you have recovered enough to decide for yourself who you wish to have near you." She struggled to sit up, and he set the bowl aside instantly, reaching for the pillows behind her with careful hands. He rearranged them to support her back, then pressed the bowl into her hands before she could protest. "Eat. The healers will arrive within the hour, and they will want to examine you thoroughly. You need strength." Luna lifted the spoon with trembling fingers. The broth was perfect, rich with chicken and herbs she couldn't identify, warm enough to soothe without burning. She drank it down like water, barely tasting it, suddenly aware of how desperately hungry she had been. Dante watched her eat in silence. His scarred face gave nothing away, but she could feel his wolf through the nascent bond between them, a low, constant hum of satisfaction protection mine that made her own wolf settle in ways she hadn't known were possible. "You're staring," she managed between spoonfuls. "I have waited 3 centuries for you." His voice was quiet, almost gentle. "I think I am entitled to stare." 3 centuries? "The prophecy was given when I was young. A seer told my father that I would find my mate only after I had been killed and returned from death, and that when I found her, she would be my ending." His mouth twisted. "I died 12 years ago, when assassins sent by a rival kingdom opened my throat in my sleep. I survived only because my wolf refused to let go. Since then, I have been waiting, but I never expected." He stopped, his good eye dropping to her belly. "I never expected you would already be carrying another's child." Luna's hand moved protectively to her stomach. The pup kicked once, as if in response to her sudden fear. "This changes nothing about the child," she said fiercely. "I will not give her up. I will not—" "Her." Something shifted in his expression. "You know it is a daughter?" "My mother taught me the old ways, the reading of the body's signs." Luna lifted her chin, daring him to challenge her. "She is healthy and strong, despite what Xavier claimed. Despite what everyone claims about Omega pregnancies. And I will die before I let anyone take her from me." Dante was silent for a long moment. Then he reached out, slowly, giving her time to pull away, and rested his massive hand over hers where it covered her belly. "She will be mine," he said quietly. "Not because I demand it, but because she grows within my mate's body, and that makes her pack. My pack. Any child you carry, any child you ever will carry, will be heir to everything I have built. This is not negotiable. This is not something you need to fear." Tears spilled down Luna's cheeks before she could stop them. 4 days of terror, months of hiding her pregnancy, years of being told her Omega blood made her worthless. And now this scarred king looked at her swollen belly and saw not a burden, but an heir. Dante said nothing. He simply lifted his free hand and wiped the tears from her cheeks with his thumb, his touch impossibly gentle for hands that had killed hundreds. He didn't ask why she cried. He didn't demand gratitude or submission or anything at all. He simply waited. holding her hand over the life they would share, letting her fall apart in safety. The healers came and went in a flutter of herbs and careful examination. Luna submitted to their attention with exhausted patience, answering their questions about her pregnancy, her journey, her symptoms, while Dante stood guard in the corner like a statue of barely contained violence. Every time a healer's hands touched her belly, his wolf rumbled just beneath the surface of his skin. By the time they pronounced her healthy, exhausted and underfed, but healthy, the pup thriving despite everything, Luna was ready to sleep for another day. But Court had other ideas. The noble arrived at sundown, sweeping into the king's private dining hall, where Luna had been attempting to eat actual solid food for the first time in days. He was tall, this visiting wolf, dressed in fabrics that cost more than most families earned in a year, and he looked at Luna's pregnant belly with open disgust. So this is the Omega everyone is whispering about. He didn't bother introducing himself, speaking instead to Dante as if Luna weren't present. Your Majesty, surely you cannot be serious about expending healers on a breeding that everyone knows will fail. Omega pregnancies are notoriously unstable. The child will die, and you will have wasted resources that could have— Lord Vance. Dante's voice cut through the noble's rambling like a blade through silk. He rose slowly from his chair, and Luna watched the color drain from Lord Vance's face as the scarred king unfolded to his full height. Did you just suggest that my mate's child, the heir to the Northern Realm, is a waste of my resources? That is, she is merely an Omega, Your Majesty. She is your queen. Dante's eye had gone gold again, his wolf pressing forward with territorial fury that made the air in the room crackle. She carries the future of this kingdom, and you have just insulted them both before my entire court. Luna became aware that they were not alone. Servants lined the walls. Other nobles sat frozen at nearby tables. Everyone was watching. Lord Vance of the Southern Reaches, Dante continued, his voice dropping to something cold and final. You are hereby stripped of your titles and lands. Your family may appeal to the council in 1 year's time for reinstatement. Until then, you will return to your holdings as a common wolf and consider carefully the weight of your words. You cannot. This is madness. Over an Omega. My mate carries the heir to 5 kingdoms. Dante's snarl echoed off the stone walls, and Lord Vance stumbled backward, his eyes wide with terror. Speak against her again, and I will consider it treason. Is that understood? Vance fled without answering. Luna sat frozen, her hand pressed to her belly, staring at the scarred king who had just destroyed a noble's entire future in defense of her dignity. The other courtiers had gone back to their meals, pretending nothing had happened, but she could feel their attention nonetheless, feel the shift in how they looked at her. Not as an Omega, not as a burden, as their queen. Dante returned to his seat beside her as if nothing had occurred. He picked up his wine, took a sip, and gestured for the servants to continue serving. Eat, he said quietly, for her ears alone. You need your strength. Luna picked up her fork. Her hands had stopped shaking, she realized. Somewhere between the broth he had spooned into a bowl himself and the noble he had destroyed for insulting her, she had stopped being afraid. She took a bite of food. Across the bond, she felt his wolf settle with satisfaction. Mine, her wolf agreed, and for the first time, Luna didn't fight it. Luna slept deeply that night, cocooned in silk sheets that smelled of pine and something darker. Dante's scent, she realized, woven into the very fabric of his palace. Her wolf curled contentedly beneath her skin, quieter than it had been in months. Safe. For the first time since Xavier had stood before the council with those forged letters in his hand, she felt genuinely safe. She woke to morning light streaming through windows she hadn't noticed the night before. Tall arched openings that framed snow-covered mountains in the distance. The northern realm stretched endlessly beyond the glass, all white peaks and dark forests, and a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Beautiful, brutal, like its king. A soft knock at her door brought a servant with breakfast: warm bread, honeyed fruit, a pot of tea that smelled of chamomile, and something Luna's mother would have called moonwort, good for strengthening the womb. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, still marveling at the simple fact that no one was trying to poison her here. Her daughter kicked beneath her ribs, and Luna smiled, pressing her palm to the spot. "Soon," she whispered. "2 months, maybe less, and you'll be born in a palace instead of a frozen ditch. That's something, isn't it?" The knock that came next was different, heavier, more commanding. Luna barely had time to call out before the door swung open and a woman swept inside. She was tall, silver-haired, dressed in healer's robes that bore the insignia of the Northern Realm, but she moved with an authority that suggested she answered to no one except perhaps the king himself. "Luna Frostborn," the woman said, her sharp eyes taking in Luna's seated form with clinical assessment. "I am Healer Marin, chief of the King's Medical Council. I've reviewed the reports from yesterday's examination. And? And you should be dead." Marin pulled a chair close to the bed, sitting without invitation. 4 days through winter territories, 7 months pregnant, malnourished and half-frozen. Your pup should have been lost a dozen times over. Instead, she's thriving. The healer leaned forward, something like wonder softening her stern features. "Your wolf is remarkably strong, child. Whatever they told you about omegas in your home pack, they were wrong." Luna's throat tightened. Her mother had believed the same thing, had taught her the old ways of reading body signs, of trusting instinct over doctrine. But Luna had learned to hide that belief, to swallow her mother's teachings like contraband. "The old packs," she said carefully, "they have opinions about omega breeding. The old packs are fools clinging to superstition." Marin's voice was flat, dismissive. "I've delivered 17 omega pups in my career. 14 survived to adulthood. The 3 we lost were due to external complications: violence, poison, neglect, not omega blood." She met Luna's eyes with fierce conviction. "Your child will live, Lady Luna. The king has commanded healers from all 5 kingdoms to attend you, and we intend to prove every doubter wrong." Something cracked behind Luna's ribs, not the breaking she'd felt before, but something lighter, something like hope, fragile and new. "Thank you," she managed. Marin nodded briskly and rose. "I'll send attendants to help you dress. The king has requested your presence in the Great Hall. Apparently, there's an ambassador arriving from your former pack." She paused at the door, her expression cooling. "A brother, I'm told. Come to beg your forgiveness." Luna's blood turned to ice. Xavier. She barely remembered dressing, barely registered the soft hands of servants braiding her hair and draping her in warm velvet. Her wolf had gone rigid beneath her skin, hackles raised, teeth bared at a threat that hadn't yet materialized, but that she could already smell on the wind. "He followed me." Of course he followed me. He can't let me live. Can't let my daughter live. Not when our existence threatens everything he's worked for. The great hall was vast, vaulted ceilings disappearing into shadow, torches throwing flickering light across stone walls hung with banners bearing Dante's crest. Courtiers lined the edges of the room, their whispers dying as Luna entered. At the far end, seated on a throne carved from dark wood, the scarred king watched her approach with an expression she couldn't read. But she felt his attention through the incomplete bond, felt the way his wolf stirred at her presence, the thread of possessive heat that pulsed between them. "Mine," her wolf murmured, and Luna let the feeling steady her. She took her place beside the throne, in a chair that hadn't been there yesterday. Smaller than Dante's seat, but carved with equal care, positioned at his right hand. The Queen's chair, she realized. He'd had it made for her overnight. Breathe, Dante murmured, low enough that only she could hear. Whatever he says, whatever he does, I am here. Nothing will touch you. Luna wanted to believe that. Gods, she wanted to. The doors at the far end of the hall swung open, and her brother walked in. Xavier Starfall looked exactly as he had in her memories, handsome in that sharp-featured way their mother had called too clever by half, dressed in traveling clothes that were artfully disheveled, as if he'd ridden hard to reach her. He fell to his knees the moment he saw her, his head bowing in what anyone watching would have seen as genuine remorse. Luna. His voice cracked beautifully. Sister. I've been searching for you since the moment you fled. When I learned what the council had done, he pressed a hand to his heart. I tried to stop them. I begged Alpha Greymore to reconsider. But the evidence, those letters, the letters you forged, Luna said quietly. The words dropped into silence like stones into still water. She felt the court's attention sharpen, felt Xavier's careful mask flicker for just a heartbeat before smoothing back into wounded sincerity. Sister, I understand why you might think. I raised you. Luna's voice didn't waver. Something had steadied inside her overnight. Some core of steel she hadn't known she possessed. After our parents died, I raised you. I taught you to read. I held you through nightmares. I know your handwriting better than my own, Xavier. And I know what you're capable of. She watched the performance crack, watched her brother's eyes narrow as he realized she wouldn't play the role he'd assigned her. The grieving exile, too broken to fight back, the Omega too weak to resist. He rose slowly, all pretense of supplication fading. I came to offer reconciliation, he said, and now his voice carried a harder edge. The Silverwood Pack wishes to welcome our beloved daughter home. The accusations have been reconsidered. Your lands await you, sister. Your birthright. And my child? Something flickered in Xavier's expression, there and gone so quickly Luna might have imagined it. Hunger. Anticipation. The same look he'd worn when he whispered to her in the council chamber. Everyone knows Omegas can't carry to term. We would welcome the pup, of course, he said smoothly. If the pregnancy proves viable, though surely you must know the challenges you face. It would be safer to return home, where our healers could... Your healers. Luna laughed, the sound sharp with bitterness. The same healers who told me for months that my sickness was normal? The same ones who gave me herbs that left me weaker every time I took them. Poison, she realized, the truth crystallizing with sudden horrible clarity. He's been poisoning me since the beginning. The teas they brought me, the remedies they prescribed, all designed to weaken me, to kill my daughter before she could be born. Xavier's mask slipped entirely now, irritation bleeding through his carefully crafted concern. You're clearly overwrought, he said. The journey has affected your mind. Let me take you home, Luna. Let me care for you as family should. She is home. Dante's voice rolled through the hall like thunder, and Luna watched her brother flinch despite himself. The scarred king hadn't moved from his throne, hadn't risen or threatened, but his presence filled the room like a physical weight. The Lady Luna is my mate, Dante continued, each word precise and cold. She carries my heir. She is under my protection, in my territory, among my people. And she will go nowhere unless she chooses to. Xavier's smile turned brittle. Your Majesty, I meant no disrespect. I simply wish to reunite with my sister. Surely you can understand. I understand that you arrived at my gates demanding an audience with my mate. Dante's amber eye gleamed gold in the torchlight. I understand that you speak of reconciliation, while my healers report evidence of systematic poisoning in her bloodstream. He leaned forward slightly, and Luna watched Xavier take an involuntary step back. I understand that you are either monumentally foolish or supremely arrogant. Perhaps both. These accusations are baseless. Healer Marin. Dante didn't raise his voice, but a door at the side of the hall opened immediately. The silver-haired woman emerged, carrying a leather satchel that clinked with glass vials. Present your findings. Marin approached the throne with clinical precision, withdrawing several small bottles from her bag. These were recovered from Lady Luna's blood yesterday, trace compounds that should not be present in any healthy pregnancy. Specifically, I identified nightsbane, which causes cramping and early labor, and wolfsbark, which weakens the bond between mother and pup. Luna's hand went to her belly, protective and fierce. Both compounds are slow-acting, Marin continued, designed to build up over time. Lady Luna was being poisoned for months before her exile. The dosage suggests someone with access to her daily meals, someone trusted. Xavier's composure finally shattered. This is ridiculous, he spat. You cannot prove— I don't need to prove anything. Dante rose from his throne, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. You are in my kingdom, Ambassador Starfall. You came seeking my mate under false pretenses. You speak of reconciliation while her body still carries evidence of your treachery. He descended the steps from the dais, each footfall echoing in the silent hall. Give me one reason I should not execute you where you stand. For a moment, Luna saw genuine fear in her brother's eyes, the terror of prey before predator, of a wolf who had finally cornered himself. But then something shifted. Something calculated and cold slid behind his expression. Because killing me means war, Xavier said quietly. I came as official ambassador of the Silverwood Pack, with the blessing of Alpha Greymore and 3 allied territories. My death would be an act of aggression against 4 packs. Even the Scarred King cannot survive that many enemies at once. He smiled, and it was the smile of a man who had planned for every contingency. But I'm not unreasonable, Your Majesty. Keep my sister if you wish. Play at mating with an Omega who will only bring you grief when her pup dies, as Omegas' pups always do. I ask only permission to remain as ambassador, to repair the bond between our territories. His eyes slid to Luna, and the hunger there made her skin crawl. To be near my sister during this difficult time. Luna felt Dante's fury through the bond, felt the way his wolf howled for blood, for violence, for the satisfaction of tearing out Xavier's throat and ending the threat forever. But she also felt him leashing that rage, containing it, because her brother was right. Killing him now would mean war. You may remain, Dante said finally. The words scraped raw from his throat. As ambassador. Under guard. You will not approach the Queen without her explicit permission. You will not enter the royal wing. You will not speak to her staff, her healers, or her servants. He stopped inches from Xavier, close enough that her brother had to crane his neck to meet his eyes. And if I find evidence, any evidence, that you are continuing your campaign against my mate, I will kill you so slowly that your allies will be too horrified to seek vengeance. Xavier bowed, smooth and mocking. Of course, Your Majesty. I am here only to serve. He was escorted from the hall by a contingent of guards whose expressions promised violence at the slightest provocation. Luna watched him go, her heart hammering against her ribs, her wolf snarling with impotent fury. He's here, inside the palace, inside our territory, and we can't touch him. She felt Dante's hand close around hers, warm, steady, grounding her when she might otherwise have drowned in fear. He will make a move, Dante murmured, leading her away from the watching courtiers. Men like him cannot resist, and when he does, we will be ready. He's been trying to kill me for months, Luna whispered. My healers at home, they were his. The food, the remedies, everything. He's been poisoning me since I announced my pregnancy. Dante stopped walking, turning to face her in the shadowed corridor. His scarred features were tight with controlled rage, but his touch remained gentle as he cupped her face in his battle-hardened hands. Listen to me. His voice was low, intense. You survived 4 days in winter carrying his poison in your blood. You walked through 3 territories when you should have been dead. Your wolf fought for you when every odd was against you. His thumb traced her cheekbone. You are not the victim your brother sees when he looks at you. You are the woman who escaped him, who found me, who will watch him fall. Luna's eyes burned. The prophecy says my mate will be my ending. His smile was fierce and tender at once. Perhaps it means the ending of my loneliness, the ending of the cold king I became while waiting for you. He pressed his forehead to hers. I have died once already, Luna. Whatever comes next, I will face it with you. Her wolf surged forward, and Luna let herself lean into him, breathing his scent, feeling the warmth of the incomplete bond pulse between them. His arms came around her, careful of her belly, surrounding her in strength and protection. I'm afraid, she admitted quietly. I know. His lips brushed her temple. Be afraid, and then be fierce. That is the Omega way your mother taught you, is it not? She pulled back, startled. How did you? Healer Marin told me of the old ways in your blood. His expression softened. Your mother was wise, and her wisdom lives in you, Luna. Trust it. Her daughter kicked, hard enough that Dante felt it through the embrace. His hand moved to her belly, spreading wide over the swell, and Luna watched wonder transform his scarred features. She moves, he breathed. She knows her father's voice. The words slipped out before she could stop them, but she didn't regret them. Not when she felt the shock of joy that rippled through the bond, not when Dante's eye went bright with unshed tears. Mate, he whispered, and it was a promise. Luna felt something shift inside her, not breaking, not cracking, but settling, like a key turning in a lock, like coming home after years of wandering. She didn't fight it. The attack came 3 days later, in the hour before dawn, when even the palace guards moved slowly through their rounds. Luna woke to wrongness, a metallic taste coating her tongue, a cramping pressure in her belly that sent ice through her veins. Her daughter thrashed inside her, frantic movements that spoke of distress rather than the usual healthy kicks. Something was wrong. Something was terribly, horribly wrong. She reached for Dante through the bond, but the connection felt muffled, distant, as if wrapped in layers of wool. Panic clawed at her throat as she pushed herself upright, her hands trembling against the silk sheets. The water. The cup on her nightstand, half empty from when she'd woken thirsty hours ago. She hadn't thought to question it. Hadn't considered that Xavier might have found a way past Dante's guards, past the precautions, past everything they'd put in place. Her mother's teachings rose through the fog of fear. Wolfsbark tasted of metal. Nightsbane caused cramping. Both together, in high enough doses. Dante? She gasped, but her voice came out weak, breathy. The bond stretched thin between them, and she realized with horror that he wasn't in the palace. He'd left before midnight to meet with scouts reporting movement on the eastern border. Movement that now seemed suspiciously timed. A distraction. Xavier had created a distraction. Luna forced herself out of bed, her bare feet hitting cold stone. The world tilted dangerously, but she grabbed the bedpost and held on, breathing through the nausea. Her wolf pressed against her skin, lending what strength it could, howling silently for their mate. The door to her chambers opened. Xavier stepped through, dismissing the guard behind him with a casual wave. He wore the clothing of an ambassador, fine wool and silver clasps, but his eyes held nothing of diplomacy. They gleamed with triumph as he took in her swaying form, her hand pressed to her belly, her face pale with poison. You look unwell, sister, he said softly. Perhaps you should lie down. How did you? She couldn't finish the question. Her tongue felt thick, clumsy. Your handmaiden. Xavier closed the door behind him, the click of the latch echoing like a death knell. She was so grateful when I offered her family lands in Silverwood. All she had to do was add a few drops to your evening water. He tilted his head, studying her with clinical interest. The dose should have killed you in your sleep. I'm impressed you woke at all. Luna's knees buckled, but she caught herself on the bedpost, refusing to fall. Her daughter kicked weakly, and rage burned through the poison's fog. Rage at this man she had raised, had loved, had trusted with her life. Why? The word tore from her throat. I raised you. After mother and father died, I was the one who held you through your nightmares. I taught you to read. You held me back. Xavier's mask slipped, revealing the bitter jealousy beneath. You were always the special one, the Omega with the healing gift, the daughter who could do no wrong. And when you announced your pregnancy, when everyone started whispering that maybe Omegas could carry to term after all, I realized you would take everything from me. He stepped closer, and Luna felt the predator in him, the wolf that had learned to hide its teeth behind a beta's smile. Your lands should have been mine when our parents died. Your standing in the pack should have been mine. And when your impossible pup survives, every alliance I've built will crumble because you prove that Omega blood is not the weakness they all believe. His lip curled. I cannot allow that, Luna. Surely you understand. Her wolf snarled inside her chest, and Luna felt something shift. Not breaking, not cracking, but waking. Her mother had taught her the old ways, the Omega ways, and Xavier had forgotten what Omega voices could do when pushed to their limits. She straightened despite the poison burning through her veins, drew breath despite the cramping in her belly, and when she spoke, her voice carried power that rattled the windows in their frames. Tell me the truth, Xavier Starfall. The Omega command rippled through the air like a shockwave. Tell me everything you've done. Xavier's eyes went wide. His mouth opened, and words poured out against his will, a flood of confession that he couldn't stop, couldn't control. I forged the letters. I bribed your healers to poison you slowly. I paid the handmaiden tonight and promised lands to 3 packs in exchange for their support against the scarred king. I planned for you to die here so I could tell everyone the Omega pregnancy failed as everyone expected. And when Dante dies from the prophecy, I'll claim your territories and... He clamped his jaw shut, horror dawning in his eyes, but the damage was done. Luna heard movement in the corridor, guards who had heard her Omega voice through the walls, who had come running at the surge of power. The door burst open, and 4 of Dante's most loyal wolves poured into the room, their faces hard with fury as they took in the scene. Seize him, Luna commanded, and her voice still carried that strange resonance, that authority she had never known she possessed. He has confessed to treason against the crown and attempted murder of the queen and her heir. Xavier lunged for her, desperate now, cornered, his wolf surfacing in a last bid for violence. But Luna didn't flinch. She planted her feet, raised her chin, and met his charge with nothing but her voice. Stop! He froze mid-stride, his body locked in place by the Omega command. The guards seized his arms, dragging him back, and Luna watched the man who had once been her brother struggle against bonds that existed only in his own mind. You can't do this, Xavier snarled. You're just an Omega. You're nothing. I am the mate of the scarred king. Luna's legs trembled, but her voice remained steady. I am the queen of the northern realm, and I am the Omega who survived everything you threw at me. She stepped closer, close enough to see the fear finally blooming in his eyes. You will face trial before the 5 kingdoms. You will answer for your crimes, and you will watch an Omega's daughter grow to rule the lands you murdered for. The words echoed through the chamber, and Luna felt them settle into truth. The door crashed open again, and Dante was there. His scarred face twisted with terror, his amber eye blazing gold. He crossed the room in 3 strides, his hands finding her face, her belly, checking for damage with frantic desperation. Luna. I felt. The bond went thin. I couldn't. I'm here. She caught his wrists, grounding him. I'm alive. So is our daughter. His forehead pressed to hers, and she felt his wolf howling through the bond, relief and rage, and something that might have been awe. Behind them, the guards dragged Xavier toward the door. The prophecy, Xavier shouted, struggling against their grip. Your mate will be your ending, scarred king. She'll destroy everything you've built. She'll... Dante turned, slow and deliberate. The gold bled completely into his gaze now, his wolf fully at the surface. When he spoke, his voice was the growl of an apex predator. My mate gave you the mercy of a trial. He released Luna gently, stepping toward her brother with measured steps. But you just tried to kill her in my palace, in my territory, with my guards as witness. Xavier's bravado shattered. Please, I'm her brother. You can't... You stopped being her brother when you poisoned her food. Dante's claws extended, gleaming in the candlelight. You stopped being anything but a threat to my mate and my heir. Luna watched her brother's eyes go wide with true terror. Part of her wanted to look away. Part of her wanted to stop this, to extend mercy one more time. But then she felt her daughter kick, weak and struggling. And she remembered the months of poison, the exile in winter, the 4 days of walking through death to reach safety. She remembered Xavier's smile when he'd promised her pup would die. She said nothing. Dante's claws tore through Xavier's throat before he could scream. Blood sprayed across the stone floor, hot and copper bright. Xavier crumpled, his hands clutching uselessly at the ruin of his neck, his eyes fixed on Luna with fading disbelief. She met his gaze without flinching. My mate gave you mercy, Dante repeated, standing over the dying wolf. I am not so generous. Xavier's last breath rattled in his chest, and then he was still. Luna felt nothing, or perhaps she felt everything, too much to process. Grief for the brother she had loved as a child, relief that he could never hurt her again, exhaustion from the poison still burning in her veins. Her knees finally gave out. Dante caught her before she hit the ground, lifting her into his arms with desperate care. Healer Marin, he roared, already moving toward the door. Someone get me Healer Marin now. The hours that followed blurred together in fragments. Marin's hands on her belly, her voice calm despite the urgency. Bitter antidotes poured down Luna's throat. Dante pacing like a caged animal, refusing to leave, his presence a constant warmth at the edge of her awareness. And through it all, her daughter fought, kicked and struggled and refused to give up, just as Luna had refused on that 4-day walk through winter. She's strong, Marin murmured at last, her hands gentle on Luna's swollen belly. The poison weakened her, but it didn't take hold. She's fighting back. The healer's silver eyes met Luna's. She has her mother's spirit. Luna's vision blurred with tears. She'll live? She'll live. Marin squeezed her hand. Rest now, my queen. Your body needs time to purge what remains. But when the healer withdrew, Dante took her place at Luna's bedside. His scarred features were haggard, aged years in hours, and when he took her hand, she felt the tremor in his grip. I almost lost you, he whispered. I felt the bond going thin, and I ran. I ran faster than I've ever moved in my life, and you were already fighting, already winning. His voice cracked. You saved yourself, Luna. I saved our daughter. Her free hand found his scarred cheek, tracing the ruined skin with infinite tenderness. And now I need something from you. His eyes searched her face. Anything. Complete the bond. Luna held his gaze, her wolf rising to meet his. I don't want to spend another moment with this thread between us when we could have everything. Dante's breath caught. You're weak. The poison is leaving my body. She pulled him closer, her fingers tangling in his dark hair. I'm not asking because I'm afraid. I'm asking because I choose you. Because I want to belong to you in every way a wolf can belong to another. For a long moment, he simply looked at her. This scarred king who had waited 300 years, who had died and returned, who had watched a prophecy hang over his head like a sword. Then something shifted in his expression. The tension bled away, replaced by a tenderness that made her heart ache. Tell me if you need me to stop, he murmured and lowered his mouth to her neck. His lips found the junction of her throat and shoulder, that sacred place where mate bonds were sealed. Luna tilted her head, baring herself to him, her pulse racing beneath her skin. His tongue traced the spot, tasting her, memorizing her. Then his teeth sank in. White-hot pain lanced through her body, sharp and consuming, stealing her breath. But even as the pain crested, it transformed. Heat flooded her veins like liquid sunlight, spreading from the bite to every corner of her being. She gasped, her back arching, her fingers digging into Dante's shoulders. Through the bond, she felt him, not the muffled thread from before, but everything. His loneliness, centuries deep. His fear when he'd felt her fading, his fierce, consuming love that had sparked the moment their eyes first met. His wolf howling in triumph as the bond sealed between them, permanent and unbreakable. Mine. His voice echoed through her mind. Finally. Forever. Luna's wolf surged forward and she didn't fight it. Her hands found his jaw, tilting his head, exposing the scarred column of his throat. She felt him go still beneath her grip, felt the vulnerability of a king submitting to his mate. She bit down hard enough to taste blood. The taste was copper and pine and something uniquely Dante, a wildness that matched her own, a strength that recognized her equal. Pain rippled through him into her through the bond, and then it transformed just as hers had, becoming pleasure that made them both shudder. Yours, she answered through the bond. Always, only yours. Mate, he whispered against her skin, the word trembling with awe. Mate, she breathed against his throat and felt the truth of it settle into her bones. They held each other in the aftermath, Luna cradled against Dante's chest, his arms wrapped around her with desperate tenderness. Through the completed bond, she felt his heartbeat sync with hers, two wolves finally finding their other half. The prophecy, she murmured after a long moment. It said your mate would be your ending. Dante's chest rumbled with quiet laughter. And so you are. He pressed a kiss to her temple. The ending of my loneliness. The ending of the cold king I became. The ending of everything I was before you. His hand spread over her belly, where their daughter kicked with renewed strength. You are my ending and my beginning, Luna. The prophecy simply failed to mention that endings can be beautiful. Her eyes burned with tears she didn't try to hide. After months of poison and exile, after years of believing herself worthless because of her designation, after a lifetime of being told that Omegas couldn't do what she had done, she was here, alive, mated, carrying a daughter who would prove every doubter wrong. I love you, she whispered, the words slipping out without thought. Dante went very still. Then his scarred features softened into something young and vulnerable, the expression of a man hearing words he'd waited centuries to receive. I love you, he answered, from the moment you stood at my gates demanding an audience, refusing to collapse. I loved you then. I love you now. I will love you until the sun burns out and the mountains crumble to dust. Luna pulled him down for a kiss. Their first true kiss, she realized, soft and deep and full of promise. Their daughter kicked between them, and they laughed against each other's mouths. 3 weeks later, Luna delivered her child in a chamber filled with healers from 5 kingdoms. The labor was hard, brutal, everything she'd feared. But Dante held her hand through every contraction, and Marin's calm voice guided her when the pain threatened to consume her. Through the bond, she felt her mate's terror held barely in check, his prayers to gods he claimed not to believe in. And when their daughter finally emerged, screaming with healthy lungs, Luna wept. "She's perfect," Marin announced, placing the squalling infant in Luna's arms. 10 fingers, 10 toes, a strong wolf spirit, and her mother's stubborn will. Luna gazed down at the miracle she'd carried through poison and winter and every obstacle her brother had thrown at them. Her daughter had Dante's dark hair and her own gray eyes, and when she opened her tiny mouth to cry, Luna felt her heart break open with love. "Elena," she whispered. "Her name is Elena." Dante's scarred face was wet with tears as he reached down to touch his daughter's cheek. "Elena Blackwood," he breathed, "heir to the Northern Realm. Proof that everything the world believed about Omegas was wrong." The announcement went out that same day. An Omega had carried a pup to term. Not just carried, but delivered a healthy heir to 5 kingdoms. The news spread like wildfire through every territory, every pack, every corner of the woven world. Everything changed. The coronation ceremony took place a month later, when Luna had recovered enough to stand before the assembled courts. Dante placed a crown of silver and sapphires on her head, and his voice rang through the great hall. "I present Luna Blackwood, Queen of the Northern Realm, mate of the scarred king, mother of the heir apparent. Let any who would challenge her right step forward now." No one moved. No one even breathed. Luna stood beside her mate's throne, their daughter cradled in her arms, and looked out at the sea of faces, nobles and commoners, alphas and omegas, wolves from every territory who had come to witness history being made. "The world told me my daughter would die," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "The world told me Omegas were weak, worthless, incapable of carrying life. The world was wrong." She lifted Elena higher, letting everyone see the healthy, thriving infant. "Let this be proof. Let this be the beginning of a new understanding. Omega wolves are not less than any other designation. We are not disposable. We are not weak." Her voice rang with the power of an Omega queen, and she felt it settle into the hearts of every wolf present. "We are survivors," she finished, "and we will be ignored no longer." The cheers that erupted shook the very walls. That night, Luna sat in the royal chambers with Elena nursing at her breast and Dante's scarred cheek resting against her knee. The scarred king, terror of 5 kingdoms, survivor of assassination, the wolf prophecy had marked for death, slept peacefully for the first time in decades. Through the bond, Luna felt his dreams, warmth and safety, and the steady pulse of a future neither of them had dared to imagine. She stroked his dark hair, her heart so full it ached. Beyond the window, the northern realm spread out beneath a sky full of stars, her home now, her kingdom, the place where she had found everything she'd ever needed. Her mate breathed steadily against her leg. Her daughter suckled contentedly at her breast. And somewhere in the great beyond, Luna imagined her mother smiling down at her. "I survived," she thought. "I found him. I proved them all wrong." Elena finished nursing and drifted to sleep, her tiny hand curled around Luna's finger. Dante stirred, pressing a drowsy kiss to Luna's knee, then settled again with a contented sigh. Luna closed her eyes and let the peace wash over her. This was her ending, her beginning, her happily ever after. And it was everything she'd never dared to dream it could be.